Primal Storms. This is the fun one. Where are they? Who are they for? This was asked by Mr. GM because they're not here. So the Primal Storms are basically the pre-patch event, but they appear in the world, right? They have an infinitely farmable currency that gets you eye level 359 gear. And then the stuff that I think you can get like 4 of the currency a week or something.
4 or 5 or something.
Yeah, so it will then upgrade that, or you'll be able to get a new version of the item, which is eye level 385, which is a pretty nice item level, but it is just a bit below normal rates. So basically, he tweeted, "I will never understand why the Elemental Storm system is not starting until Dragonflight Season 1. Essentially going to be dead on arrival." So that's what he said. And then Good Lord replies, he's just trying to make the point that world quests are giving 366 items and gearing through the Elemental Storms will take absolutely ages for little result. I think it's going to take something like 16 weeks for a full set of 385 epics and hours of farming for 359. So yes, this I think was rightly confusing to many, many people. And that is where ex-World of Warcraft developer Jeff Hamilton said, because it's not for a player playing like you. It's for a different kind of player who you're not thinking about. It won't be dead on arrival at all, but the kind of players who are going to post on the internet about the game aren't the ones who'll be using it.
Yes.
Now,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like a little bit of that falls away when you think about what the bloody game gives you already. That's the bit where it doesn't make sense to me. We already have the game rewarding you 385s from rare mobs. We already have the game, with the world quests.
See, right. I will explain to the best of my ability why I think this is actually why there's a lot of truth and why I consider this a pretty revealing thing to say. There's almost no way to say this without coming across like I bet up myself or I bet up all of us. But there are going to be players who play this game who don't even know what a video game is effectively. There could be a shit ton of people playing this game who, because it's when he says who are going to post on the internet about the game. Because everyone in chat, you're posting on the internet about this game in some capacity. People tweet about it all the time. There's the subreddit posters, and sometimes posts on that subreddit can feel like how do you dress yourself in the morning with thoughts like this? How is it even feasible? That you how do you,
the dragon riding replies were like there is a really good Imager link of just compiling absolutely unhinged takes from the official forums on dragon riding, and it's like, hang on a second, your underwear's got 2 holes. Are you sure you'll be able to get that right?
Yeah, it's like yeah, exactly.
Because that's 2 holes instead of 1.
Yeah,
that's pretty. You got 2 legs. Yeah. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, so how do you like reconcile that there are people who are probably not posting about it when people who post about it can be that like detached from the world? Because obviously it's like there's a difference between people being stupid. I don't think a person is stupid. I think people are stupid. I think people have glaring blind spots a lot of the time.
That's it.
And the people who because obviously how do you why are you allowed to drive a car if you post with like an IQ like that? But they're probably actually reasonably intelligent people, or at least reasonably screwed in for other things. The whole street smarts was book smarts idea. It's joked about loads.
In fairness, goddamn, I wish it was harder to obtain a car.
Yeah, of course. But there's
you have such a responsibility to every other human around you if you're in a car. Yeah, sweet Jesus.
Yeah, so there's going to be this probably a massive, and this is where someone who used to work at Blizzard will know this better than we do because they have access to the data. They can see who's playing. They can see the sorts of people who are playing. And we joke people who still click abilities that's fucking what are you doing? But I feel like there's probably a bigger portion of World of Warcraft's actual player base and actual income are people who do not give a single fuck about what is even in any world considered the meta. They literally log in and do whatever the game does and just doesn't have a thought about it.
If I was to hit you with a counterpoint, the exact same thinking was probably used to justify Shards of Domination in Korthia.
Yeah.
And has been used to justify so many completely boneheaded design decisions that have damaged the game immeasurably over time.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily change the fact.
And the 2-week timing.
Yeah.
Well, the type of player, are they really going to even fucking, like, if we're talking about this type of player, are they going to know what Season 1 is? Because if they're never going to hop into anything above a Mythic Zero dungeon, and they're probably, I think they're not raiding, or they're just doing LFR. Is Season 1 really gonna be that? Like, they're not gonna be like, oh, Season 1. I would have thought at most they'd be doing that to prevent overwhelming that type of player with so many map markers in week 1. I guess I don't know. To me, I could see this making sense within some of the older and I think quite maladaptive development paradigms. I would also say there are those who create new numbers. Those are the people who drive the industry forward. There are then those who follow numbers. And I think a lot of extremely data-driven decision-making is inherently conservative. You're never going to be a pioneer who is expanding, the gaming experience of your players if you're always just following the numbers and segmenting your player base in that kind of way. I think if you treat them like sort of babies or whatever, and no, this isn't for you, this is for them. And like it makes no sense for you, but it is good for them. Like, well, you're never going to have players who kind of like advance through, the game, right? Like, can you not? Because I don't know. I see and maybe this is just a very inherent, like, when you're in the indie space, there is, when you're in the indie space compared to a lot of what AAA does, and make no mistake, World of Warcraft's a AAA video game. There is definitely a bit of a counterculture. The amount of times I've seen indies passionately, basically raise their fists and give really impassioned talks about conservative, data-driven game design. I think it was Barry Mead who really did the best banger. Barry Mead, The Room. The Room, the iOS puzzle box. Yeah. Games, fucking hell, some of his talks are great. It was just one he did in the Mac here in Belfast. But I guess it's like, I get what Jeff's saying. I feel like it is not a way to cohesively design a video game that will be... I just don't think it's ideal. No, well, I disagree.
I largely agree. I think there's... From the perspective of being, how to describe this, doing right by all of your customers, there's a case if you do have to design with these people in mind to some extent. You can't just say, fuck, we don't want those as customers. We'd rather have people who'd, actively engage with the game. Obviously, you're right to do that if you want to, but there is, that is, for someone running a business, if that's money on the table, you'll probably want to pick it up. Stuff like that. But I think it's mostly like the idea that he says, imagine something like 50% of current level 70 characters or item level 300 to 320. That's who stuff like this is for. Which means there's probably a much bigger silent majority than we're aware of who basically don't engage with the game in the way that we think they do or is even designed. And that's not to say they should hold Primal Storms back for them. It's just to say that there's probably a huge amount of data that they make decisions on.
Yeah, but if it's 300 to 320, what's the fucking difference? What does the difference of the 2 weeks make?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not defending. I'm not defending that. Yeah, I'm just saying that's what I took away from this.
Yeah, but that's the bit where it just starts to make less and less sense to me.
Yeah,
I don't really think it stands up that well, and I don't know. That feels like it feels like a weird way to design, to be honest, and content that is for somebody who is eye level 300 to 320 that is just a mob grind like that. I don't even think that's a particularly good fit for that type of player anyway.
Well, it might not be.
So I guess that's the thing. As I think through this, yeah, sure, that probably is their reasoning.
Yeah.
I think it is overall not particularly good reasoning.
Yeah. I just wanted to highlight that there's that number of imagine 50%, if that's anywhere close to true, obviously he doesn't have current numbers, but if that's something that like he was working on when he was there and it was based on the rationale that that's the amount of numbers, then there's clearly a pretty huge dichotomy they have to deal with versus how much work they have to do to make 50% of the player base happy versus the other 50% who will be happy to apparently allegedly, if the logic is sound, to just kill mobs for 16 weeks for better gear when they could go do a harder dungeon. But that's a whole different thing with anxiety and how people play in group content. And this is like solo farmers getting gear in this way. Whereas I imagine in a world where Blizzard are more happy to, even the discussion we just had about the vertical progression, adding more of it. If Primal Storm's gear was a bit more Primal Stormsy in terms of how it was Stormsy, just thought the rapper Stormsy, a bit more Primal Stormsy in the way that there's vertical progression throughout that system by itself, then they may be happier to put it up higher. But they're obviously they're still afraid of fighting, because I imagine they have raid and M+ participation that's way lower than they want. But they can't get people to go in there. The only way they can do it is gear. And they can't make people go have a bad experience. Because they tried that in WODs with, can you do the silver proving ground, please? And then we'll let you in. We'll make these harder. And then that went wrong.
How much damage did that do?
That did a lot of damage. That did an obscene amount of damage because people who are item level 300 probably don't know what a rotation is or don't know how to press buttons.
I suppose the problem they have is they can't fire their customers.
Yeah, that's the problem.
There's a lot of things in business where like there is an idea of firing your customer that's actually important because there are some customers that will be at the expense of other customers. Really good examples. I mean, even LinkedIn. They had to really pivot away from some of their initial customers because actually the model that would have made a lot more sense was like for the recruiters and like a different side of the business. They had to prioritize on that kind of feature set. And that ultimately is the way that they were able to have an exchange of value that led to them scaling to the point where LinkedIn is what it is today. A horrific business hellscape that I never want to go to. But apparently people use it and give it money. So it is what it is. But I guess... you cannot fire your players in this kind of case. I don't want to say fire your players, but like there's plenty of people that our game is not for, and I don't want them to buy it. Yeah, because they won't like it, and I'm not going to make any compromises or say to the team, you guys have got to make compromises to make the game appeal to a more broad audience. There's been a few times where I've thought like, are there maybe little smart things we could do that maybe would be better for broad appeal, or is there a way that we could frame something that would work better?
Are you unnecessarily cutting people out?
Yeah, but like we're never going to even let's just say pulling narrative punches, because there's a lot of things if you think about shit that actually happens in like say the source material we're drawing for. We're not going to make those things not be a thing that can happen in the game because some people will have a cry. Like no, if you've signed up for the authentic experience, sorry, that's who this is made for. Yeah. And I guess that's like the weird problem. If you have to always segment things like that, you then are not able to say, build it and they will come. You're not able to just design the best overall game that you have or that you can. Instead you have to design the best overall product. But, not product for customers. Like product for all customers. That's different. And product for corporate masters, which is also, different. Yeah. And that ends up being kind of tricky. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
what they don't have the option to not do that
because
of the game that it is.
Because it's World of Warcraft and it used to be very, very different, and it used to be a cultural powerhouse. And how many of what we enjoy as players is paid for by people who log in and do a sweep of world quests and don't even know what a raid is. Like because so much of the game used to not be that. So that's a weird thing. It's like, I thought that was very, very interesting.
Skull says when you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. Like that's a very common, what's the word? Turn of phrase, whatever. Yeah. And it's commonly said by everyone for a reason.
Yeah, it is quite literally true because people have different tastes. And that's a thing where they clearly struggle with that internally to quite an extent. And I feel like it's a pretty highbrow position to go just fire your customers, but you obviously if the number of 50% is anywhere near accurate, then that is from a business decision perspective of say Ian's I would like to do this, and then him and John Haidt have to go, right, well, that's what impact is going to have on our revenue, and Ian goes, listen, brother, It's I don't know if I should listen, bro.
Suddenly, he is from Northern Ireland now.
Yeah, listen now, brother. This is gonna be so, John. Right, you'll have to stick with me for this, but it'll probably drop about 30% of our customer base, and that'll be about 35% of our revenue because they buy store mounts. But trust me, it's a good investment. The game will be better, and it'll be bigger in the future. And then John just goes, what the fuck?
He says, "What?"
It's like
when Alex said, "We'll burn the tree," trust me, bro. I trusted him, and it didn't work out that time. No.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a little bit of that.
It's inherently conservative.
Yeah, but it because they came from that place of not being able to get rid of all of that. So I feel like that's why you see a lot of this weird kind of stuff, and what's ultimately holding back. 'Cause I mean, even in our chat, there's people who are saying like, yeah, I don't particularly like doing like the hard content or anything above Mythic 0 because it's like too hard and there's too much anxiety. And you're like, you're not engaging with the vast majority of what the game's budget is put into in design wise because of all these reasons. And that's like, obviously the individual can do whatever they want, but that is a little bit weird from like a game design perspective. And it's just, it must be such a struggle to deal with.
And how is that particular person served by all of this being delayed by 2 weeks until the season comes out?
Yeah, that's the thing where that doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. Like,
there you go.
That clearly doesn't make any sense.
So that's the bit that I've been trying to get at.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I know that. Yeah, like I know that.
It makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, I completely knew that from the start. Like,
yeah. So it's like, why? I don't get it. It's not like it's going to compete with LFR gear because you unlock the powerful gear from the Primal Storm so slowly.
Yeah, I imagine it was some decision. Oh, I think I know what it was.
Was it about population management for other grinds?
Could have been population management for other grinds, yes. And the one thing I actually immediately thought was, that's a fucking good point, didn't think that. I actually thought, remember the way the Primal Storms were in the pre-patch?
Yeah.
And they didn't work? Do you remember the way there was 4 spots and only one was populated at any point in time? With mobs. In each zone.
Yes.
And remember the fact there were supposed to be 4 zones?
It was only 3.
And there's only 3.
Until the very end, I think.
And imagine that you're in the Dragon Isles launch, and you know that we'll get into the post where they struggle with engineering.
Yeah.
There is a decent chance they went, this is going to fucking break. We need to turn it off. Or knew it was going to break it and didn't turn it on. That could actually be a genuine reason. It could be, this is going to break because we already have a serious amount of mob spawns. We're adding insane weather effects. What happens if people fly through them at high speeds? Does it cause instant lag? Because the Azure span's laggy the hell already. So there could literally be a point of population management, not for grinds, but for the game to not fall apart. That would make more sense than this, I think, than the idea that it was at the wrong time, especially because like your time and how fast it is.
There's something else like meanwhile, I don't know, I'll go from 366 to 373 from world quests.
Yeah.
And like, okay, if you're at 366, you're probably ahead of most people. Mm-hmm. But that's still, think about how many item levels world quests have just given you.
Yeah.
And that's happening anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people mostly, I mean, yeah, agreed. Most people, I think, are agreeing with Dan here.
Yeah, because he's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is never about Dan being wrong. Like, it's just the talking about how much of the player base is apparently so low, and how it's not really, how we tend to forget about those, but Blizzard have to deal with them.
Yeah. I feel like they're not worth worrying about. If you just make a good enough game, they shouldn't be a problem.
I mean, that's the annoying part. I'd love to agree, but at the same time, depends on your definition of good game.
Well, I mean, thus far, it's been things that I think are laser targeted at them, which has been the broad content of Dragonflight so far. As opposed to, well, Shadowlands.